Cuba! It's me, episode 62 of The W.I.L.L.I.W show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. Today, I'm continuing my series on the famous Ike the Crippler Shaw. Now, I wanted to talk about some of the history of Ike Shaw. I know in my other videos I talk about the things that I interacted with. Well, here is what I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just what I've been told by other people mostly, because I can't believe anything that he told me, because that wasn't true. But I believe he did grow up in Calgary. I don't know about his father, but I did meet his mother, Fran, and Fran Rockledge. And apparently he lived pretty close to the Hart brothers, and he claimed to have trained with them and this and that and everything else. I think he was friends with one of them. I know somehow he got to wash one of the cars one day. Maybe he got paid $2 or something. And I don't really know that much about him. I don't know how he met his wife, and how could she have possibly fallen for him. And I don't know how he made his way to Ontario. I do know that he served jail time before the whole wrestling thing got going. I believe he served 4 years for fraud. I bet a lot of us wish we knew that before we got involved with him. But in all honesty, even though he was such a cheat and a liar and a scumbag, and he stole money from a lot of us, for some of us it worked out, because even though we went there and he didn't give us what he promised, we were able to be around other wrestlers who loved wrestling as much as us and figure our own way out. So, I mean, it worked out good for a lot of us, but some not so much. And then, so somehow he made his way to Ontario. I don't know how that came about. Maybe when he was released in prison, he was doing time in Ontario. I have no idea. And he had this one guy, his accountant, Dave Stalker. And I couldn't stand Dave Stalker because he always talked to me like I was a piece of crap. And then here he was banging his banging Ike's mother, Fran, who was 30 years older than him and almost dying. And of course, Dave was taking advantage. It was his first sexual experience in his whole 50 years. And I couldn't stand Dave Stalker. I don't know how he came into the picture. I do know from some people's account on the Facebook that somehow Ike weaseled his way into the Bygraves, who ran a wrestling school, and they had this tiny ring, you couldn't even do a suplex. I think it was 10 by 10, and they did shows, if you could call them that, I guess, right? Some of the Bygraves are good people, but they weren't that great as far as wrestling goes back then. So Ike met a couple of bigger boys, and he talked to one guy who had money and how he was going to start a wrestling school, and he had connections, and he knew Smith a little bit. I think he knew Dean a little bit, and he promised, I think it was Smith, he promised Smith the world, I'm going to start this Hart Brothers school, and you could be the trainer there, and I'll make us millions of dollars. And Smith said, oh, that sounds like a good idea. Well, the next thing you know, I could weasel this one guy into give him all this money, and he got this place and got this ring and called it the Hart Brothers. I don't even think Smith even knew about it at this point. He just said, oh, it sounds like it might be good, right? So Ike gets this school, and somehow, I don't even know, how did he meet Waldo Von Erich? I think Waldo lived locally, and Waldo just loved being around the business. He was amazing. I remember him telling me about a story about how he main evented in one city and then got flown on a private plane the same day and main evented in Madison Square Garden. 2 main events in one day. He was a legend. And I think he just wanted to be around wrestling. He wanted to help the new guys and stuff. And so here was this one wrestling school that came around. And knowing Ike was such a good liar. He could sell, especially if you didn't know him at first, until you had it figured out. He could sell someone something they didn't even want to buy. He could sell them on it. And he was kind of a whiny liar too. Come on, bro. Sometimes people would just say yes to shut him up. So somehow Waldo got in the picture, and somehow Hart got in the picture. But I don't think they were that involved. They just coming around. But he milked the heck out of them. He totally. And so eventually he started ICW. And he started running shows with a lot of talent. Well-known talent, the Bushwhackers, and Tatanka, and Ted DiBiase, and Duke the Dumpster Drozy, and Bruiser Bedlam, and King Kong Bundy, and Greg the Hammer Valentine. And apparently, Ike used to have cameras in the school. Well, someone told me that he only got cameras in the school to try and spy on Greg the Hammer Valentine's daughter. Can you believe that? Of course you can if you know the guy. These are all true stories. You can't make this stuff up. I wish I could. If I could make up something this good, I'd be a millionaire author. But no, this is really just Ike. He just, oh my, what a character. And so he got ICW and he did a couple shows, and then he got like this bus, which was actually kind of a good idea, with bunk beds on it, so he could do tours and people could take turns sleeping and driving, and he did a bunch of tours up north and stuff. Like, I don't even know how a lot of this stuff fell in his lap, or a lot of the stuff happened because the people around him would get it connected and stuff. And he could have done really good. He had a lot of deals that ended up falling through because his work ethic was non-existent, and somehow he met Gothic Knight and he saw millions of dollars in him, but that never worked because they're both quite characters. As far as I know, I never met Gothic Knight, but I've heard some stories about him. But so I don't know why he closed down ICW. It's probably something where he needed to write it off for bankruptcy or something like that. Because even though he had tons of money coming in, yet he had no money. Like, he spent it faster than he made it. And he made a lot of money. I think he liked to gamble a lot. I know one time when I was at the school, he was bragging that he won $500 on, like, poker online or something. And I didn't even know you could gamble online until I met Ike. And then, like, when I went there, they started ACW. I don't know if I was on the first show, but they hadn't done very many shows under ACW, and they only did, like, 10 ACW shows. It wasn't very many. And, like, everything he had hooked up, like, he burned it down. Like, whatever he had going for him, he was never allowed back or welcomed back. Like, he had some things where his guys were going down with Dan Severn in the States, and that could have been big. And, like, so many things could have been big. He got to be the developmental territory for WWE Canada at one point through Carl DeMarco, which he had no hand whatsoever in creating. He's such a character. Like, he had cameras everywhere in the school, like, spying on people. Like, I remember when I first got there, like, don't talk. Like, he might hear you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's spying on us? Like, I have no privacy? Like, I can't even go in the shower room and jack off or something because he might be watching me on camera? I wonder if he ever did. Like, did he have ones in the bathrooms and watch people in the toilet? I could see it in him, but he was also really lazy, so I don't know if he ever watched the cameras unless he suspected. Like, one time he flipped out that everyone was using too much toilet paper. Well, there was like 7 guys living in the school at that point, so, toilet paper might get used. And I only saw him shower 7 times in the 2 years I knew him. And he had this little back room, and he would pee, and he would, like, poo in these containers. I do not know how his wife, like, even managed to stay in the room. Like, if he take a big crap at a Tupperware container and just leave it in the room, that is gonna stink for a while, especially with the diet that he was on. He was not on a very healthy diet, let's put it that way. And he made records. I still think he holds the record for highest Burger King order ever placed in Cambridge, Ontario. And so yeah, somehow and then he went to Puerto Rico. He could have done something big in Puerto Rico, but he kept pissing off the locals and demanding more money where he hadn't even shown what they were about and stuff. And he actually did do a couple matches. He did a match with, like, I think it was Bruce Hart, because they had no one else, and he looked like a wrestler, so they're just like, we're going to just do, like, a quick roll-up. The match was, like, 2 minutes, that was it. And he did another match where he was puking after. I think he did 3 matches. I know one of them he was puking after. Like, what a guy. But then, like, to us, well, for me anyway, for the students, he would claim that he did everything and everything under the sun. There's nothing he didn't invent. There's nothing he didn't do in wrestling. Yet I had never heard of him before, and I knew a lot about wrestling. He did moonsaults. He main evented around the world. In Japan, he did a 60-minute match against Ric Flair. Like, all this stuff. And it was so funny, because once you got to know him and know he was lying, then you could just egg him on to get a good story out of him, and then try and keep a straight face, and then try and laugh about it after. I've seen him do so many despicable things to people. I've heard him lie to students, and, like, I almost wish I could have, like, got on the phone and said, don't come here, like, but I guess you got to get your way in the business somehow. Like for me personally, I went there and I met a lot of other people passionate with wrestling, and I got a couple shows, and then we were able to branch out, and a lot of people did that. But Ike is such a character. I just want to get word out about him. It's almost like, I know when I was at the school, people were scared to say anything because, like, on the thing, for me, once I paid my money, it was non-refundable. So he could say I broke a rule. The next day I went there and kicked me out, and I could not get my money back. I know a bunch of people did sue and were supposed to get their money back, but he never paid. Like, there was a lot of cases against them, but and they were won. So maybe I could have won, but I wanted to wrestle. So, and then they say, oh, the court orders you to pay his money back, Mr. Ike Shaw. Well, he never paid. I think that's why he fled to BC. And I just want to get word out. It seems like he shouldn't be allowed to get away with this stuff. Like, he fled to BC and then he just lives under a rock and everyone forgets, and he just gets away with whatever he could do. Like, I should do that then. Like, well, I wouldn't because I have a conscience, but why don't I just screw people out of, like, millions of dollars and then just go hide away and no one ever says anything? We need to do something, really, about this guy. He can't just keep getting away. He's done a lot of shady things, not just screwing people out of money, but, like, a lot of other things that I don't really want to get into. Like, those are the kind of things that you can't really talk unless a lawyer's present kind of thing. But, like, this guy lied to so many people, screwed over so many people, crushed a lot of people's dreams, like, that really loved wrestling. And, I mean, in some ways it good. Like, the guys who didn't really have the passion for wrestling would get weeded out. So that was good. But they should be weeded out by they can't cut the cardio, or they can't handle the road life. Not by him promising you something and not delivering. But, I mean, it was good in certain ways, yes. But, like, we can't just keep, like, everyone forgets about it, and, like, especially on Facebook, everyone submits these anonymous stories. But, like, why aren't we putting this man on blast? He's a criminal. Like, he's allowed to just walk into the sunset and get away with murder? Like, come on. But I just want to touch on it a little bit. I will do another episode coming up about some more funny stories, but I just wanted to, like, kind of give a bio, I guess, of Ike. This is just word of mouth, half the stuff I know. Like I said, he's told me a lot of stuff, but I can't really talk about that because it's all lies. But if the police gave him a lie detector test, he would pass it because he honestly believes it. Like, that's the sad thing. He's been in such a high state of mind that he tells these lies over and over that eventually he, like, actually believes it's true. And he takes credit. Anybody that's had any success in wrestling, he taught them everything he knows. And they owe him a bunch of money for royalties. And it's never ending. But I'm saying it does need to end. Like, we can't just let it go unnoticed, under the radar. That's why I'm putting him on blast. This is episode 62 of The W.I.L.L.I.W Show. Remember, like, or you get a leg drop. Comment, or you get a clothesline. Subscribe, or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling. Cuba!